Hey, you're on the Bible Forum. I'm Warren Sprouse. Do you ever cheat somebody out of money? WesternJournal.com has a story about a nearly 10,000 word account of President Trump's income tax history. A history that was deliberately written to cast the president as a villain in the minds of hardworking, tax-paying Americans. It speaks of billions or millions of dollars, figures most of us don't deal with on any kind of a basis, let alone a regular basis. Not even New York Times readers. But the headline said, "Long concealed records show Trump's chronic losses and years of tax avoidance." It claimed that a billionaire who became president of the United States paid just $750 in federal income taxes the year he won the presidency. In the first year in the White House, he paid another $750. That's the lead. That's the hook. The first sentence is a story that should set the tone for everything that follows, although it does not. Because the truth is that President Trump did apparently pay millions in taxes in those years. $1 million in 2016, $4.2 million in 2017. Something the New York Times admitted deep into the story, saying his potential taxable income in 2016-17 included $24.8 million in profits from sources related to his celebrity status and $56.4 million for the loans he did not repay. Reality? The alternative minimum tax law would let his business losses erase only some of his liability. Each time he requested an extension to file his 1040, and each time he made the required payment to the IRS for income taxes he might owe. $1 million for 2016, $4.2 million for 2017. But virtually all of that liability was washed away when he eventually filed, and most of the payments were rolled forward to cover potential taxes in future years. Trump made the required payment to the IRS for income taxes he might owe. If you're in business for yourself, you know what that's like. Every 3 months, they want their money. Followed by the figures of $1 million for 1 year, $4.2 million for the second year. In other words, Trump did, in fact, pay considerably more than $750 in taxes in both years, 2016, 2017. He just didn't actually owe what he paid. In fact, an argument could be made that since those payments actually amounted to overpayments, that's what happens when Trump's final liability was established at the ridiculously low figure of $750, the whole incident ended up working to the president's favor. If you're in business, you have an accountant. If he's worth anything, you're paying him. He does stuff like this. You don't even understand it, but he does it. It happens more often when you have an army of accountants and lawyers who have nothing to do all day but find ways to save you money. And wealthy people, all wealthy people, have them. And this sort of thing has been going on for decades. Since the money wasn't returned but was rolled over toward to cover potential taxes for future years, Trump was in effect giving the federal government about $5 million until some future date. And he gets no credit for that, no interest. The rest of the article amounts to a propaganda gift to his presidential rival. But it's important to note that the word illegal is not one of the almost 10,000 words the Times unleashed to attack the president on the eve of the first debate. If it did use the word illegal, illegality, it was only in quoting a New York State regulator, no doubt a Democrat, and discussing activities of the Trump Foundation, but not the president's taxes. It's just as important to note that any businessman or woman in the United States, from a mom and pop diner to the titans of industries, could, will, should take every step possible to minimize their payments to the IRS. The Bible Forum is a ministry of alternatives, biblical counseling, and education. It is a 501c3 nonprofit corporation. For those of you who are not aware of how that all works, I don't have to file anything until I take in more than $50,000 a year. I don't have to send any records to the government. I don't have to keep records if I don't want to. I can spend the money any way I choose. And until it reaches 50,000, I got no forms to fill out. Now, some people have gotten nonprofit corporations for that purpose, so that they can do that sort of thing. I did it to keep everything separate. And there ain't a whole lot of money in there. I could spend all the money that I get, and it wouldn't be a year's salary for most people. And I'm talking over the last 10 years. Every year, the country's law schools churn out countless attorneys who specialize in tax code, because it's an area of law that's in constant demand, particularly among uber wealthy like Trump, who employ legions of accounting and legal minds to make sure their taxes are as low as possible. The final bill, as the Times story demonstrated, is still up to the IRS. The individual and the lawyers and the accountants are involved. It's not the New York Times editorial board or the folks at MSNBC who get to determine how much the Donald owes in taxes. What about your money? InternationalMan.com published an article this week by David Stockman that paints a dim view of our financial future. David Stockman is a Harvard grad who served in the House of Representatives. He's from the state of Michigan. He's the founding member of the Blackstone. The Blackstone is a private equity firm. He's also publisher of the popular Stockman's Contra Corner website. You all subscribe to that, right? He's the chief editor of the Stockman's Bubble Finance Trader. He says there is only one thing to do. Get out of the market. Sell any security that moves or stands still. Why? He says because our bipartisan duopoly, the houses of Congress, have lost all contact with reality. The principles of sound money management, of fiscal rectitude, and minimalist government intervention, principles which sustain a capitalistic prosperity, they are at risk. He points to the Federal Board of Governors, who he says the Senate is either ignoring or simply cannot see what's happening. In the future, more years of massive monetization of the public debt and never before imagined fiscal immorality on both ends of Pennsylvania Avenue. To date, the public debt stands at $27.7 trillion, which is 138% of our gross domestic product, what we earn, what we make, what comes into the coffers of this nation. And there is zero will in either party to break its ascent. He believes that at some point in the not too near future, confidence in the money printing scam at the Fed will finally evaporate. Then the financial sins of 50 years will come crashing down upon us all. When measured by something relevant, such as the average real GDP growth rate during his tenure, it turns out that the Donald's cherished score is the very worst among all the presidential terms since 1948. A money guy, a business guy, spending like there's nothing else to do. Even after setting aside the economic plunge in the second quarter, can you say coronavirus? Real GDP growth averaged 1.8% per year during his first 38 months in office. That's less than the annualized gains during the terms of Obama, Bush the Younger, Bush the Elder, Eisenhower, Nixon, Ford, Carter, Reagan, Clinton, Kennedy, Johnson, and Truman. And the numbers are provided for. I won't bore you with the percentages. They go from 1.9% to 5.5%. The author doesn't blame Trump. He says the U.S. economy was sinking under the dead weight of $77 trillion of public and private debt and the decades of public waste and private malinvestment this debt explosion enabled. What Stockman believes to be Trump's wrong-headed sponsorship of locking down the nation, all at the recommendations of doctors as well as the public hysteria they fostered, has delivered the coup de grace. So yes, it is the economy, stupid. That is to say, whoever wins in November is going to inherit an economy so battered, so bruised, and freighted with speculative excess and debilitating debt that they are certain to go down in history as the president who made Herbert Hoover look like a winner. My opinion? Am I alone in wondering about the wisdom of shelling out so many millions, trillions of dollars the way this president has done? But I have been comforted by the fact that he's a money man, and that given a second term, his plan is to put it all back, and then some. Coronavirus was not on the plate. That snuck up. And there's a sense in which a lot of it is puffed up. Mr. Stockman doesn't believe any of that. How about you? On the other side of all that is the Trump doctrine. President Trump is again being nominated for a Nobel Peace Prize. Number 3, bringing what his nominators said was common sense to global diplomacy through the Trump doctrine. 4 Australian law professors wrote that the Trump doctrine is Nobel worthy, citing the recent peace agreement between the United Arab Emirates and Israel. The agreement was cited by 2 others who have nominated Trump for the coveted honor. Australian law professor David Flint said Trump went ahead and negotiated against all advice, but he did it with common sense. He negotiated directly with the Arab states concerned and Israel and brought them together. How? He has firstly common sense, and he is only guided by national interest, and therefore an interest in the Western alliance. What he has done with the Trump doctrine is that he has decided he could no longer have America in endless wars, wars which achieved nothing but the killing of thousands of young Americans. So he reduced Americans' tendency to get involved in any and every war. Trump has made a point, he says, of noting his work to reduce the number of Americans involved in wars. Flint said Trump's unique brand of diplomacy is really producing peace in the world in a way in which none of his predecessors did, and he fully deserves the Nobel Peace Prize. A member of the Norwegian parliament who earlier nominated Trump for the prize said Trump has been a peacemaker on the world stage. Indeed, he said Trump has broken a 39-year-old streak of American presidents either starting a war or bringing the United States into an international armed conflict. He has his faults. I still have hope that as a money man, he's going to turn all this around. We'll see. Stay tuned. We come back and talk to you about Washington, D.C., the tale of 2 cities. Don't go away.